and he contributor to KTRS Sports in the evenings and joins us every Monday. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, McGraw. How's it going?
Good. Let's start with the good or the interesting, and that is this Blues trade. You follow this stuff more closely than most of us. You got to give the Blues credit for trying something, right? Losing in the playoffs, not getting to the playoffs last year, so a little bit of a shakeup was coming. Sounds like this is a pretty good guy.
Yeah, I think the move is good. I think the fan base should be excited about it. They've added a player who is kind of that elite-ish center that they needed, and when you miss out on Tavares, then Ryan OReilly was next up on the list of guys who were going to be available through free agency or trade, and the Blues found a way to get it done without giving up one of their most prized prospects, and also able to offload two contracts that they weren't upset about shipping off to Buffalo. So you lose some draft picks, but you never know how those guys are going to pan out,
right.
And you make your team much more competitive today. Ryan OReilly helps this team in a lot of areas. He is going to be that, help them in the middle of the ice where they badly needed help, as that became apparent last season. And also he's not just a one-way player. He's a two-way guy, and he helps in the power play, which was totally anemic for the Blues last season. He had as many power play goals. I think he was third in the NHL, or tied for second in the NHL last year. And he also led the entire league in face-off won, which was another area the Blues could use help in. So they added a guy who helps them in multiple ways and did it, and actually lowering their cap space a little bit with the contracts they got rid of. So I think it was a great move, and you never know how it pans out, but it shows that Army wasn't going to sit on his hands and do some sort of a soft rebuild, that they're going to be a competitive team, or at least try to be this year.
Yeah, all right, good. That's the good. The bad and the ugly. That was a lost weekend here in St. Louis for your Cardinals.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, they're going through this meat grinder of games against winning teams, and it just got longer because the Giants, by the way, have turned into a winning team. So now that stretch against winning teams is even longer, and the Cardinals just switched to the road. They didn't capitalize at home. They weren't able to sustain any sort of momentum that kind of came out of that rebound in Milwaukee. You beat a good team, a very good team in the Cleveland Indians, and then the bottom falls out again against the Braves. That game yesterday wasn't as close as it seemed. In some ways, I give the Cardinals credit for hanging around and making it interesting late, but when you zoom out, they're losing ground here. I crunched some numbers this morning. I guess the high point for this team, probably now that the Milwaukee series has not turned into momentum, would probably be that sweep of the Cubs here at Busch Stadium. Earlier in the season, that yesterday marked the 50th game since then, and the Cardinals are 22-28. They're moving in the wrong direction here. They're closer to the Pirates in fourth place than they are to the Cubs and the Brewers.
All right, so Matheny had that closed-door meeting up in Milwaukee that seemed to turn things around, but I mean, they've been decimated by injuries. I read your column. They're not one trade away. Where are we going forward? I mean, is it time to throw in the towel? I mean, where are we with this?
Well, they need to be trying. They're trying to decide that before July 31st. In some ways, this is going to feel very similar to where they were last year, where I think you very well could get to a point where you're looking at making some sort of moves that you feel like help you this season, but also later. I don't know that this team has justified any moves that really sacrifice any sort of future for this season. When you look for signs that this is a playoff contender, I feel like you have to get very optimistic to see something that jumps out. The moves that are or are not made for this team are going to tell us a lot about what the front office thinks of the roster that it built, and the front office shares some blame in this too, and some of the guys that they brought in have not performed. The big question is kind of, because it has the potential to be the third missed postseason, that automatically translates to stress and friction when it comes to the manager. And are the Cardinals going to try to load this team up to try to get Matheny back in the postseason, or are they going to answer questions about whether or not they want to bring a manager who has missed 3 postseasons back for a go with it the fourth time? So that's kind of the underlying story here. And there's a lot of people who are going to be paying a lot of attention to that as they near the trade deadline.
Yeah. Manny Machado, any chance the Cardinals going after him and getting him in this month before the trade deadline?
Well, I'd just say it would be very uncharacteristic because the Cardinals have shied away from those kind of trades because they have said that they can't make a trade like that hoping that a player will sign an extension. And really, the only reason you trade what it will take to get Manny Machado is because you hope to sign him to an extension. To get him, the Cardinals don't like to give up a lot for 1-year guys, let alone half a season guys.
Right.
And there's no really evidence that Manny Machado isn't going to want to enter free agency, which is going to be very lucrative for him, and he's going to be courted, and he can go wherever he wants for the most part. And some team out there is going to spend silly money to sign him. And the Cardinals usually aren't ones that spend silly money, and They've looked smart for that approach many times. So it could happen, sure. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't. Would I be surprised? Absolutely. He is a player that makes your team much better, but for half a season, I think the Orioles are going to ask for a lot.
Yeah. Explain this to me, Ben Frederickson of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. They're 5.5 out in the Central, but they're only 2.5 in the wild card. So, I mean, is the sky really falling, or are we sort of losing perspective here? They're only 2.5 out of the wild card.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at the state of play, then it's concerning. When you've won 4 of your last 16 series, then it's concerning if you're talking about a postseason team. But really, the only thing that matters in terms of getting in are the standings, and the standings are really the best sign of the Cardinals. Right. If that makes sense. It's not how they play or how they're trending. It's what the standings say they are.
Right.
And the standings say they still have a shot. Now that shot's declining. They're not mathematically expected to have much of a chance to win the division here. But the National League is the opposite of the American League this year. The American League has every powerhouse team kind of rising to the top, and really there's not much suspense over on that side. The National League is the opposite of that. You got a bunch of teams kind of hovering, and really the Central is the best example of it, where you've got the Cubs and the Brewers dueling it out, and the Cardinals kind of lurking behind. I don't think anybody expects the Pirates or the Reds to get in this, but the Cardinals are still within spitting distance. So the standings are much more optimistic than the actual games for the Cardinals, which is interesting.
Yeah. I'll leave on this note. The Marlins are trying to lose, and the Mets have a worse record, okay? So the Mets are trying to win, and the Marlins are trying to lose, and the Mets aren't beating the Marlins. So it could be worse.
Well, yeah, and, you never if you're going to try to lose, you should probably be good at it. And if you're going to try to win, you should probably be better at it than the Marlins. That's safe to say. And the Cardinals have better records than the Marlins. I do think expectations are a little bit higher around here, and I think they should remain as such.
No, I understand. But I mean, if people are like, missed the playoffs 3 seasons in a row, it's like, the Mets, I'd like to be a Met fan. They're worse than the Marlins, and the Marlins are trying to lose. So it's all a perspective. Hey, Ben, happy 4th. Be safe with the new wife, and we'll talk to you next Monday.